again, when your values and your life no longer match. Um, and so, this is, I would say, a fairly good size proportion of the work that I do as a life coach is with people who could fit this description, that their values and the life that they're leading no longer match. Things feel stuck, out of alignment, right? Misaligned. They may not have that language initially, but something just doesn't feel right, right? Um, your life on the outside may look great, right? I mean, there are a lot of people where, on the surface they look really successful. They might look happy to other people, that they have abundance in their lives. But you have this, ongoing feeling, almost like a whisper in your head, or maybe a feeling that you have in your body that things just aren't right. Right? This is not the life you signed up for, or that you really should be living. That something feels out of alignment. It could be something with your work or your family life or your health or whatever. Something feels out of alignment, right? And it's that gap between the life you're living and what you really feel deep down inside is something different that you should be experiencing. That's what in the coaching I work with a lot of people on, and it's really good work when you get into it. Really good work. Um, so that in its essence is about your integrity, right? It's kind of like that voice or that feeling of misalignment is your integrity calling out to you and saying, hey, we got to fix something. Something's not right here, right? Because if you're not living fully aligned in the different aspects of your life with your values and beliefs, then your integrity is shot, right? Your integrity isn't there. Because integrity isn't just about being honest and truthful. Integrity is really living aligned day to day with your core values and beliefs, right? The positive ones that you really want to embody, right? That best version of your authentic self, right? That's what you're after. Um, so what are values, like in this sense? Your values, some people kind of think or feel like values end up being like rules, and they're not really. They're more like compass points. They're things that guide us, that guide our decisions, our behaviors, or should, right? They're the things that really matter to us, that we really believe in, that are important. Kindness and love and compassion and empathy and maybe curiosity even. Gratitude. I mean, these are things that, family, service, right? These are things that if we're really living a mindful life, can help guide us, can help us make difficult decisions, and allow us, not to feel like we're being restricted by a rule. Quite the opposite. That we're being liberated to live the life that we really are meant to live. To feel like tough decisions aren't so tough because we know what we're trying to do. We're trying to be this person who lives by these values, right? It enables us to look ourselves in the mirror every night when we go to bed and feel really good about the person we're looking at. Like and love that person and respect that person. That's a person of integrity, right? Who's living in accordance with her or his values, right? That's awesome. That's a gift, right? That's not something that's putting handcuffs on you. That's something that is liberating you, right? To live a better life. The reality is that for a lot of us, in my experience, things early on get out of alignment, right? Think about it. I mean, we get messages and kind of brainwashed in a way by parents and the media and social media certainly and culture, TV, movies, music, whatever, that create expectations, which are the real rules, right? That we feel like we have to follow. And these expectations of other people, these rules of other people in society, start to steer us off of our path, right? And get us out of alignment with what we really care about believing. Or it's uncomfortable or scary, right? Fear is something that also can take us out of alignment, right? Fear of conflict, right? That maybe early on in life we learned to be a people pleaser, right? And the peacemaker. And these things gradually over time take us out of alignment. It's usually not the case that suddenly you wake up one day and yesterday you were in alignment, today you're not. That's usually not the way it works. The way it works is that it's a gradual thing over time. You may not even notice it, right? Or maybe these little feelings along the way as you're starting to drift out of alignment, where you're starting to be more and more inconsistent with your core values, right? When you're starting to lack integrity, right? And it's easier to kind of get out of alignment through this gradual process, right? We gradually, slowly, bit by bit, accommodate other people, their expectations, their wants, their needs. We give into more and more, little by little, our fears, right? And we should not be living our life out of fear. Should not. There's a certain amount of fear protection that's really good and healthy, right? Don't burn yourself on the stove kind of thing, right? Don't drive drunk. But most of the time, day to day, right, in terms of living in accordance with our values, we do not want to be sacrificing that at the altar of fear. We just don't want to be doing that, right? And you can watch out for the kind of warning signs that you're starting to get out of alignment, right? For a lot of people, it's things that might feel like they're not in character for you. You're getting angry more often. There's a constant, almost chronic, low-grade resentment that you're feeling towards one person, towards life, people in general, whatever it is, right? That feeling of I should feel grateful, but right, something's not feeling right? You feel oh my God, I've got abundance, I should be grateful for all these things. Yeah, something's not right? That feeling is telling you something. Losing the energy or drive or motivation to engage in things that you used to really care about. Again, sometimes that can be depression, right? And depression certainly can happen. If you're out of alignment chronically, that can contribute to depression as well, right? And then you gotta, seek help with a therapist probably. But there is also that kind of feeling of and I've had this at times where, particularly, since I started my own job, my own business, that there are times where pieces of it felt not in alignment, and I didn't realize it at first, but I just found myself not feeling as energized to sit down and get to work every day. And I was wow, this is weird. I really haven't experienced that, hardly at all in my life. And the only time I really did in a significant way was when absolutely something was out of alignment. And so eventually it made me be curious recently when this happened. And sure enough, it was just that, there were pieces of my business that I felt well, that's not really in alignment. That's not the way I want to be spending my time. That's not the way I want to approach that. And once I figured that out and how I wanted to shift things, all of a sudden my energy exploded again. It's great, right? So you got to listen to these kind of warning signs, right? The canaries in the coal mines about things are not quite in alignment, right? And then be curious about it. Try not to be judgmental with yourself, but just be curious. Take a walk outside. Go for a walk in the woods, or meditate, or journal about it. What's what do I think is going on here? What doesn't feel in alignment? Where does that feel particularly acute, right? Um, my biggest one was when I was a diplomat with the State Department when I was younger, and great career. But I was working on our policy toward the genocide in Bosnia at the time, in the early 1990s, and it was horrific. We were in, most of our eyes, complicit with genocide, and boy, did that lead to, bouts of depression, frustration, and again, just feeling totally out of alignment. And I ended up quitting publicly as an act of protest and became an activist. And it was, again, like, in some ways, a scary thing, give up my career and all that. But at the same time, it was liberating, right? I mean, I felt in alignment with my core values in a way that I had never felt before, and understood the meaning and importance of integrity in a way that I had never understood before. And it changed my life, right? Right up till today, right? The core of my coaching practice is about helping people live with integrity, and it goes back to that moment and just what a life-changing experience that was, right? So let's pause for a moment here. And you may want to close your eyes again if you want. And I'm going to give you a couple of prompts, and I just want you to sit with each one, for a few moments. And then if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat what came up for you, please do that. It'll probably resonate with somebody else and may inspire somebody else to participate as well. So first, where in your life do you feel most like yourself? Right? Where things are most aligned. Where do you feel most like yourself in your life? Just sit with that for a moment. I'll tell you, for me, 4 things came to mind. First, right now, when I'm working with clients and when I'm in these live sessions, I just feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. Everything feels aligned. It feels just I feel so present. It's amazing. So thank you for that, for being here for that, giving me the opportunity to do this. Second, game night with my family. I totally feel that way, right? And then on the water, like, whether it's walking on the beach or being on my cousin's boats. I just feel like I'm one with nature and with the ocean, and I don't know, just feel connected. Yeah. So again, if anybody feels comfortable sharing, pop it in the chat. Where do you feel most like yourself? And then while some people are thinking about sharing, the next prompt: where in your life do you feel like you're playing a role? Where do you feel like you're playing a role? Or maybe you think of it as wearing a mask, right? Where are you not in alignment, right? Where instead of being your authentic self, you're playing a role because that's what other people expect of you, or because it's easier or less scary, or whatever the reasons are. Where do you feel like you're playing a role? Right? Just sit with that for a moment. See what comes up. I've worked on this a lot over the years. So I would say it probably still comes up sometimes with some situations with family, right? Just because whether it's avoiding conflict or people pleasing or kind of playing the role that I think people expect me to play, that sometimes creeps in. I think that's true for a lot of us, right? That there are relationships and situations where we revert, consciously or not, to playing the role that we used to play. And it may have been that back then that role was very authentic, that that was really who you were in that moment. But sometimes we feel, and sometimes people in our lives make it explicit that they expect us to continue playing that role in the same way. And yet we've moved on. We're not the same person anymore. And that certainly was true, I think, in my college friend group. For years, that was true. Decades. And I think there were one or two people who really expected everybody else to continue playing the same role. And it created some tension at some point. And then I think we got to a place where finally, I think everybody was pretty accepting of who each other was, you know, at that moment in time, rather than expecting the old roles. But for a while, for a long time, it was absolutely true, and I found it very frustrating and very stifling. So I don't know if that's true for you. Um, Next prompt. What would you do differently if you stopped being afraid of disappointing someone else? What would you do differently if you stopped being afraid of disappointing someone else? That'll get you, huh? That's a good one. Yeah. What would you do differently if you stopped being afraid of disappointing someone else? Interesting. You know, I mean, I think for most of us, the general answer is I would be more myself. I would be more authentic. I would take more chances. I would be more vulnerable. Um, I think it's interesting to think about what in particular you would do, and why, and see what comes up. Right? Maybe think of a particular situation, a particular relationship, and what would you do differently today if you weren't afraid of disappointing someone else? Again, if anybody feels comfortable sharing in the chat, sometimes people don't. That's okay. Right? Um, for me, uh, I do think that I would be more transparent with my thinking. I think I try to be as authentic as possible as much of the time as I can. But I think sometimes that it's not that I'm playing a role, it's that I filter too much, right? That and sometimes, it's important to filter. You don't share everything with everyone all the time. But I do think maybe I filter too much, and that I'm too hard to read sometimes, or I'm not transparent enough with my thinking or my feelings in certain situations and with certain people. And because I'm either afraid of conflict or maybe disappointing them or upsetting them, and and so I just filter, and again, I think stay up here too much, whereas I am by far the happiest, most connected um, version of myself when I am fully transparent. I love being fully transparent. I love having people in my life who I can just be totally honest and open with and let them know what's going on up here and what's going on here. That's beautiful. And so I've gotten so much better at that in general, but there's absolutely still want to work on that in certain situations. Yeah, I don't know if that resonates with anybody. Um, so now I want you to think about, something in your life where you've been tolerating it and you know you shouldn't be? What's something in your life you've been tolerating and you probably shouldn't be, right? That's one of the ways we can feel out of alignment, right? Is when we're tolerating something we really shouldn't be. We know it deep down inside, right? What would that thing be? What are you tolerating that you shouldn't be? I think for me, that comes up probably most often when people say things that I think are hurtful and reflect, I think, potentially a difference in values. Though I think most of the time we would find that it's really about these inherent biases and the echo chambers that we all live in today. And but because it's so difficult sometimes to have those conversations, that I tolerate them too much, and or I don't necessarily go in for the repeat of the conversation. I've had it before. Maybe it went okay, or maybe it didn't. Sometimes you need to have that persistence, right? Um, if the relationship really matters, right? So I think I tolerate that too much sometimes. Yeah. Um, Also, for a while, with the business stuff, I was totally, not totally, but I was falling prey to the, kind of marketing um, gurus and the conventional wisdom of how to use social media marketing more effectively and all that, and chasing the algorithms. That was so not me, and so I sort of stopped cold turkey for a while because it was just feeling out of alignment. It felt icky, and focused my energy on where I feel in alignment, like places like this, just to be present with people and to be a part of community and build community and trust that the rest will kind of take care of itself and feel so much better. Right? I was tolerating that discomfort too long. Right? And I think that's part of the point of this whole session is to remind ourselves that sometimes we tolerate feeling out of alignment too much, right? And that we need to be better about noticing the signs that we're out of alignment and then taking some small steps in the direction of getting more in alignment. So let's think about that for a moment. This week, what's some small step you can take to move in the direction of being more in alignment with your core values? Um, and Katie, hi, welcome. Um, what's it could be about the thing you've been tolerating too long, or it could be about one of the areas in which you feel like you're playing a role or wearing a mask. What's one small thing you can do differently that'll help you feel more in alignment? And again, if you feel comfortable, you can pop it in the chat. Just one small step. That's how we make change. I started off by saying that we get out of alignment usually gradually over time, right? Little by little with the accommodations and getting into the fears and all that. You can bring yourself back into alignment the same way. right? Small steps, one day at a time. Feeling better and better when you look yourself in the mirror at night, or you're journaling or meditating. Giving yourself a pat on the back, being grateful, being encouraging of yourself, to keep moving in that direction, right? When you are showing more integrity and being more in alignment. And that, you keep doing that, in a couple of months, you might feel very much in alignment, whereas today you may not, right? And that's where a coach can help too. That's where, that, or sometimes it's an accountability partner, right? Just like with forging a new habit, right? Somebody in your corner who's going to be helping hold you accountable, but also cheering you on. We all need that, right? Katie says, giving myself permission to not work when I say I'm not going to work. Oh, that's a good one. For a lot of us these days, technology, working from home, the lines are blurred, right? The boundaries are blurred. And so that's a really good one, right? I've had to work on that myself too. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing that, Katie. Yeah, for me, I really think it's just, particularly keeping with the momentum of just showing up as authentically as I can in as many places that feel good to do that. Trusting the rest of it's going to take care of itself, right? I think that's going to be pretty good strategy. Kate says, so this morning I'm enjoying a lot of Insight Timer and the fresh air, open window here in the Carolinas. Beautiful. Love that. Love that for you. That's great. Hopefully you'll inspire somebody else, right? Anybody have any questions or anything that I've talked about that resonates with you or is confusing or you're not quite sure how it relates to a certain situation? Pop it in the chat, right? While we're given time for people to do that, I said at the top, these live sessions are free. They're supported with donations from people like you. So if any of this resonated with you and you'd like to make a donation, it's deeply appreciated. So we can keep doing this stuff, which is great. And then I hope you're following me. If not, please do follow me. And if you want to do some deeper work together, you can reach out to me here. You can join my group that I have here on Insight Timer on living with integrity and joy. I hope you do that. We're going to try and make it more and more active and share meditations and maybe do some live meditations together and support each other on this journey, right? I think it's easier, again, talk about accountability partners. It's easier if we're helping each other out, right? And sharing the journey together. Really want to create a sense of community here. I've got a little mini course too, if you want to take that. A lot of people have been taking it recently and seem to really enjoy it. It gives you a sense of some of the work that I do with people and helps you if you're feeling a little out of alignment. Take this mini course and that may help nudge you back in the direction, or at least give you a sense of where you want to focus your energy moving forward to try and get better aligned with your core values. So I encourage you to do that. And you can ask questions and we can have conversations in the course. So that's great. And I hope you leave a rating and review for that. And then I've got a lot of meditations up here. Going to have more coming soon. So I hope you'll check those out and rate and review them and let me know in the review what you'd like in terms of more meditations. Do you want more morning ones or some affirmations or intention setting or goal setting or sleep ones or whatever you want? I want to try and be responsive to all of you. And then my next session here, I don't have the card for it, unfortunately, but the next session here is next Wednesday. I tend to do these live sessions on Wednesdays at noon Eastern time. Don't forget the clocks are changing this weekend. Though these days most of us, it's all taken care of kind of automatically, right, with our phones and all that, except like the stove or microwave. But the one next week is on what your resistance is trying to tell you. You know, it kind of fits in with what we talked about at the beginning here today about, you know, trying to really use our mindfulness to be more in touch with the kind of signs within us, the feelings, the instincts, right? The energy, the resistance, and all that, when things are out of alignment. And so a lot of times resistance that we might be experiencing to certain emotions, certain situations, people, change, you name it, we don't like that feeling, right? So you're procrastinating at something. Instead, turn it into a source of wisdom, because our resistance can teach us something. So I was at yoga today, and a friend of mine at yoga talked about procrastinating with some things, and was very frustrated by it. And I just said, what do you think is the emotion that you're avoiding through that procrastination? Because procrastination is usually about avoidance of an emotion, feeling. And she was like, whoa, I gotta meditate on that today. That's it, wow. And then all of a sudden, like, instead of feeling frustrated about the resistance, she was like, oh, this has something to teach me. So we'll talk about that next week, right? So I hope you'll sign up for that. And yeah, so again, so thank you. Thank you for being here. Katie, thanks for the donation. Really appreciate that. Again, I hope you follow me here on Insight Timer. Again, reach out if you'd like to talk about, you know, some way that I can be of help, and you know, definitely join the group as a part of that. And let's build a sense of community here. Very grateful that you were here today. Sending you all much love and gratitude. And I hope you have a lot of joy and love in your life today. And, you know, just take some little steps this week to get yourself more in alignment with who you really are and who you want to be, and your authentic self and your core values. Right? Thanks all. Be well. Be love.